Hello, everyone. This is Alpha Omega. Today, we'll review Rivian. There's good news, but also some concerns. I'll go over all of this and explain it to you. Rivian's current stock price is $14.82, and recently the stock price has been steadily rising. Let me first explain why the stock price is going up. I think I'll start by sharing the good news. So, they've achieved a positive gross profit of $206 million for 2 consecutive quarters. So, not only is achieving this a really good piece of news, but by reaching this milestone, they're also set to receive $1 billion from Volkswagen. Just wanted to share that with you. First of all, what it means for the gross profit to have turned positive is this. You get gross profit by subtracting the cost of goods sold from revenue. But for this to be positive, either the revenue needs to go up or the cost of goods sold needs to go down. If you look here, it says that production volume has increased significantly. So they produced a lot of cars. As sales increased, you could also say that the gross profit turned positive. Or when it comes to the various parts and components needed to make cars, if you look here, it clearly says that as the supply chain gradually stabilized, the prices of the parts and materials they need also stabilized as well. So, how exactly did Rivian place orders for these parts with their suppliers? And what was their approach? Well, bulk purchasing. They bought in large quantities or through long-term contracts. They were able to secure these parts at very stable and low prices over the long run. So in the end, this is what I brought in. I think the profit is talking quickly. As a result, they were able to turn their gross profit positive in the end. Next, besides that, when they produced battery packs and made driver modules, they started manufacturing these in-house. This also ended up reducing their production costs. So they managed to achieve positive gross profit for 2 consecutive quarters. But honestly, turning gross profit into the black is a really good achievement. However, you also have to subtract R&D expenses here. Then you need to subtract marketing costs and all the selling and administrative expenses as well. If you look here, in 2025, the total revenue came out to $1.2 billion. So the gross profit has improved significantly to $206 million. But here's the problem. If you look here, there are transition costs, selling and administrative expenses. Subtract $380 million from $206 million. Subtract another $480 million. Result, minus $655 million. So what is the final net loss? In the end, they lost $541 million. So these guys did manage to turn their gross profit into the black as a first step. What's the second step? They need to fully turn their operating profit before tax into the black. And after that, what do they need to do? If they can truly turn their net loss into net income, Rivian's stock price will probably skyrocket. But from what I've seen so far, aside from the R1, there are 2 and R3. Right now, the R2 is priced at $45,000, and it looks like they're getting ready for mass production pretty well. They have 2 factories, right? One in Illinois and then Georgia. They're going to build factories and start production at both locations, and from what I can see, they should be able to mass produce without worrying too much about money in the future. Of course, we still need to keep an eye on things, but I think they could eventually reach net income. That's just the feeling I got. This compares Q1 2024 to Q1 2022. Gross profit rose by $733 million, from minus $527 million to minus $206 million. Net loss is still large, $1.4 billion, but improved to minus $541 million, nearly a $1 billion gain. That's incredible. Free cash flow has also improved a lot. What can you do when it turns positive? You can buy back your shares, right? And then, well, there are a lot of good things they could pay. Dividends too, maybe in the more distant future. So anyway, right now, think things are looking good, but we'll have to keep an eye on it. And as for them, they currently have $2 billion in cash. but the money they can bring in going forward. Volkswagen is set to provide $1.1 billion in June. They'll receive that support. After that, there's still capacity to receive an additional $4.8 billion in support. And for energy in 2024, $6.6 billion has now been officially and finally approved. That $6.6 billion is also set to come from the Department of Energy for the Georgia plant, which will be used to build the R2 and our 3 models. So for now, well, there's really nothing major to worry about. Personally, I think that going forward, they'll probably be able to continue their business without needing any more loans. That's what I wanted to share with you. Now, as for what they're doing with Volkswagen, they formed a joint venture called Rivian and Volkswagen Group Technologies. So the thing is, Rivian's technology and software is really advanced right now, while Volkswagen is relatively weak in that area. Volkswagen wants to build vehicles based on software-defined platforms, and they're planning to integrate Rivian's software into Volkswagen vehicles. That's what this joint venture is about. That's how we should understand it. Now, looking at the fourth quarter of 2024 and the first quarter of 2025, the number of vehicle deliveries has dropped significantly. And now, even the guidance, the midpoint is probably 43,000 units, but originally, they had given guidance of 48,500 units. That's the number of deliveries, the delivery count, but they lowered it a lot. During the conference call, analysts asked why they reduced the delivery numbers. And when they were asked, they said the reason we're making fewer cars isn't because of any internal issues. There are no problems related to the supply chain. It's just that our price, the price of the R1 car that we're making and producing right now, isn't exactly what you would call cheap. It costs about $100,000, and looking at this, it seems like consumers are feeling uncertain and their sensitivity to price has increased. So, when we looked at our customers, it seemed like they wouldn't buy as many cars as we had expected, which is why we lowered our guidance. That's what they're saying. So, that's basically how things have been summed up for now. I wanted to organize this information for you because I thought it would be good for you to know. Now, during the conference call, there were a lot of really pointed questions. Earlier, I mentioned that there were some things I was worried about, and those concerns are related to rare earths and batteries. I want to talk a bit about that. For example, they asked, what are you going to do if you can't get enough rare earths from China? That's the kind of question they're asking. So, what they're saying now is that they're keeping a very close eye on the whole rare earth situation. They're monitoring it carefully. And they also say this. Okay, so when we make our 2, we're going to make a motor that doesn't use the tortoise now. I'm planning to make it, but it hasn't actually come out yet. It's just something they're planning. About a year ago, Elon Musk from Tesla also said that they would make a motor for their cars without rare earths, but we haven't heard any updates yet. Looking at that, it seems likely that the R2 will also end up using rare earths after all. So, the risks related to rare earths haven't been completely resolved yet. So you should understand that, at present, there are still some risks associated with rare earths. Now, there are also some issues related to the battery. Instead of the current ion battery, they're trying to put an LFP battery into the R2. Let's take a closer look at this. The analyst says this. We know you're going to make the R2 in the US, but do you have any special strategy for the LFP battery? If you import this from China, you're going to get hit with huge tariffs. What are you going to do about that? That's what he says. In response, they say that at least until the end of 2025, they have some flexibility with their battery inventory. They say they can respond flexibly for now. And if you look back at 2020, for example, the battery for the Model Y was made by LG in Korea and then brought over, but by 2027, it looks like they'll end up making the batteries in Arizona. That's what they're saying. But when it comes to the 2170 battery, not the Model Y battery, and the LFP battery, what they say is that they're currently looking into alternatives for the LFP battery. So what this basically means is that when we import LFP batteries, we might end up paying a lot in tariffs. The fact that they're looking for alternatives right now means that, frankly, they haven't found a clear solution yet. That's something we can understand. So, for now, when it comes to rare earth elements and then things like phosphorus, iron, and so on, there are still some risks involved. So if these LFP batteries end up getting hit with tariffs, they're currently expecting the price of the R2 to be around $45,000. Of course, they did say this time that they won't raise the price of the R2. They said this during the conference call, but we don't know the future. If battery prices go up, the vehicle price could be higher than $45,000. If that happens, honestly, that's not a good thing. Right? It's better if they can sell a lot at a lower price, but if car prices go up, that's not good. That's what they said. Now, let's talk about the R2. I'll cover up to the R2 and then wrap things up. The midsize R2 is extremely important. If more people end up buying Rivian cars at a $45,000 price point, of course, sales will go up. Naturally, what happens when sales go up? As I mentioned at the start, this is how they ultimately generate net income. So, for them to really turn a profit, they need to sell these midsize R2 and R3 vehicles. Well, that's the key, and now there's an update on their progress. So what does Scaringe say? He says, actually, we made R2. Since this is at the pilot scale, they haven't made much. He says they've made it as a trial run for now. Right here, this is not R1. Right now, Mr. Scaringe says, this is the R2. That's what he says. By making it like this, they're testing if they can build cars well, and suppliers are also involved in the R2. Those suppliers are bringing in each part now, and they're also testing whether those parts are robust and durable. So, in reality, the R2 pilot has now been produced. Besides that, what else does he say? Right now, we're making the R1. Random. Oh, sorry, not random. We're producing it at the normal factory, and they'll also integrate R2 painting here. So, he says, we'll have to build a new factory later this year. At some point in the second half of the year, there will be news about this. They've shut down the factory. If the stock price drops because of the shutdown, that's a buying opportunity. Why? Because the shutdown is necessary to integrate the R2 into the R1 production line. So if the stock price falls because of this, that's a buying opportunity. So just keep in mind that in the second half of the year, there will be some major changes happening at our factory. I just wanted to mention that for your reference. So right now, the plan to produce the R2 at the normal plant in Illinois is proceeding smoothly and according to schedule. Next, in Georgia, they're planning to build a factory to produce the R2 and R3, but that hasn't been built yet. They'll probably break ground in 2026 and finish construction in 2028, but that's still a long way off, right? But you should also remember that they've already secured all the funding for this from the Department of Energy. So, for now, if we assume that the R2 will be priced at around $45,000 when it hits the market, these are some of the cars it will have to compete with. I prepared a list based on price range, and there are models priced at $43,000 and even $39,000. This list includes Tesla. There's also Ford, as well as our own Hyundai and Kia. Volkswagen and Nissan are on the list too, so it will have to compete with all of these brands. So when the R2 comes out, I was curious about which cars it will actually be competing against, so I organized that into a chart as well. That pretty much wraps up what I've prepared about Rivian for now. If you have any more questions or if there's anything you'd like to add, please leave a comment. I'd really appreciate it. All right, wrap the video here. I've posted about the next company in the community section. It would be great if you could check that out to see which companies I'll be covering next. That's it for today's video. Thank you.